Welcome to the College Admission TV podcast. Join us for insights from education leaders on today's academic landscape. We are excited to have as our guest Deanne D'Amelio, president at Gwynedd Mercy University in Gwynedd Valley, Pennsylvania.
Well, absolutely. I always love to start out with your journey and your pathway to the presidency. And can you talk a little bit about who are the mentors that really helped shape you and your path?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I would have to start with my parents, who really instilled in me this idea that I could do whatever I wanted to do, which for somebody who grew up in the 60s and 70s was not all that common, especially for a woman, and from a mother who did not graduate from college. So they understood the importance of education that was instilled early. And then, professionally, when I first got into higher education, which was a little bit later because I am by training an attorney and did practice for a while before I went into higher education. So when I first got hired, I was hired by Sister Mary Ann Dillon, a Sister of Mercy, who was the president at Mount Aloysius College, where I was hired to be a faculty member. And it was my first time really teaching or being in the higher ed space. So Sister Mary Ann gave me a lot of opportunities to learn about higher education. So she put me on committees and asked me to chair search committees, things like that. And I said yes. I always say to students, say yes when you're asked to do things so that you can learn sort of a broad base of information. So I worked at Mount Aloysius for 15 years as a faculty member, and then I became a dean. And Sister Mary Ann actually sent me to a conference for women in higher education who think they might want to be administrators. So I really learned so much from her about being a leader, about being a clear communicator, and how to build consensus, things like that. And she gave me those opportunities. So I really consider her to be a mentor. And then secondly, I would say Suzanne Mellon, who was the president of Carlow University in Pittsburgh, which is the place I went after Mount Aloysius, and I was the provost there for a few years. And so I learned a lot from Suzanne, watching her very closely and working with her very closely, creating a strategic plan, things like that. So I would consider those two women to be professionally mentors in higher education for me, and certainly have helped me in my current role as president at Gwynedd Mercy.
So I hear oftentimes, parents and students, but more often than not, parents ask about the value of an education, the value of a degree. And I think we're being challenged more often today, maybe than ever before, as post-secondary institutions. So how do you address that question?
Yeah, it's a common question. And, I guess I do it in a couple of ways. I talk in practical terms and then broader terms as well. So as a practical matter, the data is clear that those who graduate with a bachelor's degree have more earning potential, have lower unemployment rates. Honestly, some other key sort of indicators of, if you will, of success. Those stats are clear. They're clear for Gwynedd Mercy as well, with 96% of our grads having employment or graduate school within 6 months. We're in the top 6% in the nation for 10-year earnings, things like that. So I talk in practical terms about the clear data indicating the fact that jobs, earning power is higher. And honestly, that's what a lot of parents care about right now is my child going to get a job? So I do speak about that. But then I also talk about the fact that at Gwynedd Mercy, with the Mercy Foundation and the values that we espouse, that is a differentiator for us. And our folks, we like to say, not only do well for themselves because they have the jobs and the earning power, but they also do good because of the foundation that we give them with our mission and our core values of respect, integrity, service, and social justice. So we have a lot of folks out, alumni in the field, who have are very successful in their careers, but boy, have they also given back, and they've done wonderful things based on what they learned here. So that is really the added value, the value plus of a Gwynedd Mercy University education.
So I'd imagine at a smaller institution, it must be great to get to know probably most of the students, if not all the students, right? Compared to a flagship state school where maybe you have tens of thousands of students, where it's a lot harder. But I would imagine as an advantage, it's got to be great to be able to really, really get to know the students. And as you had mentioned earlier, especially as freshmen, to make sure that these students get involved and don't let opportunities pass.
Yeah. The students that's the reason that we're here. That's why I've been in higher ed now for 25 years. I love being around the students. I still take every opportunity I can to see them if they're playing on the soccer field or field hockey. Or last night I was with the team that had the highest GPA. I host them just for kind of a dessert reception each fall, just to recognize that, even while they have jobs and, they're on the field, that they have the really good grades that they performed. And we're Division III school. So, that's really important to be a scholar athlete. So, and I also get the opportunity once a year. We usually have a group of our young women students, and they talk about leadership. And sometimes I'm the speaker. Sometimes we bring in some of our alums who are women leaders to talk to our students. So yes, I have great opportunity to speak with SGA, student government. And just, first of all, I like to listen to them. Tell me what you're interested in. Tell me what you like about Gwynedd Mercy. Tell me what you'd like to see change about Gwynedd Mercy, because this is your school. Then you are why we are here and doing what we're doing. So it's always an education for me. I love hearing from them and listening to them. And as I said, last night I said to them about, jump in. In our opening convocation, I said the same thing. Take 100% advantage of the opportunity to not only get a world-class education, but to have the full experience. Join the club, join the team, do whatever, because it's going to pay dividends for you in the end. And that's the best advice. All these years in school myself and all these students I've had the opportunity to be with over 25 years. That is the best advice that I could give to students. But they are the heartbeat. They are the lifeblood, and they give energy to everyone who works here. That's why we're here.
So how do you make sure that students are career ready, especially, today you have jobs that aren't going to exist in 5 to 10 years, certain jobs. And on the flip side, there's going to be jobs in 5, 10 plus years that will be around that we don't even see today. So how do you make sure that students are ready for that?
So we focus on the skills. We have adapted our learning outcomes really around the skills that employers say are important. And it doesn't matter really what the job is. It's about the skills like communication, both written and oral communication, the ability to engage in problem solving, to work in teams, to have ethical decision making. Those are actually skills that we address in our learning outcomes. And you hit the nail on the head. I actually just said this also to the students, it doesn't honestly matter that much what your major is, right? I know you're preparing to be an accountant or a teacher or a nurse, and that's all fine. But it is more important to focus on those skills, because in a million years, when I was an undergraduate, I was an elementary ed major. I never dreamed I'd be sitting here as a university president talking to you about that, all these years later. And it's about the fact that I was able to focus and learn from and build upon those skills. So that's how we intentionally prepare our students to be ready for those jobs that don't exist yet, in addition to the value piece that I mentioned.
So I often hear the words meet students where they are, and that can mean everything in my experience and what I hear from presidents. That can mean everything from providing different types of learning modalities online, on campus, or maybe offering certificates in addition to an undergraduate or graduate degree. Can you tell us, how does your institution meet students where they are?
So I would say a couple things. We do, in fact, offer all sorts of different modalities, and we also have different types of students. So we have students who are traditional undergraduates, we have degree completers, and we have graduate students who are taking online courses. We have students who take degrees on the weekend. So we, in fact, have adapted. And I have to say that's from our heritage of the Sisters of Mercy, who founded the institution 75 years ago. They have always been looking for what's the next great need and how do we adapt to it. So Gwynedd Mercy is still doing that. We're very pragmatic in that regard. And so we've been doing all those things, honestly, for many years and kind of meeting students where they are. In addition to that adaptation, we also offer a lot of wraparound services for students, right, to help them get to where they need to be, like peer tutoring, professional tutoring, counseling, all those things that are important to support students in reaching their goals. So I would say we've always been adapting to what students need and then providing the support and to help them get there.
So what are the top two initiatives that you're consistently thinking about on a day-to-day basis?
So I would say we are in what I would call kind of a transformational time with projects on campus, and I mean capital projects. So one of our biggest initiatives right now is we will be breaking ground on the new Francis M. McGuire Healthcare Innovation Center, which, when it is completed, will be our largest academic building on campus at about 65,000 square feet. And so that building will house all of our nursing and healthcare programs with state-of-the-market simulation labs, skills labs, but also allow for what we call interprofessional education so that students in social work and psychology can work in teams with our nurses, our respiratory therapists, our public health folks, speech language pathology, all of that, basically the way they work in real world setting in the acute care hospital setting. So that's a big project, and that groundbreaking is happening in a few weeks. So that's sort of on my mind, in addition to some other big capital projects that we have. And then really just transitioning to our next strategic planning effort, because we're about to really wrap up our current strategic plan, to kind of get us. I'm always looking forward to the future for the next several years.
So you're at about 2,000 students today, is that right?
That's
roughly?
about right. That's right.
Okay. So how big do you want to get, or how big can you get?
Yeah, interesting question. We don't at the moment really set a number goal. We look at programs, and we have a well-established reputation in healthcare, business, education, but so we look to see where's the need, where's the program, the next thing that we want to build, and then how big can we go from there. So, I think definitely we want to get a little bit bigger than where we currently are, because like everyone, the pandemic affected where the enrollment was. So we definitely think we can get a little bit more than where we are now. So we have definite plans to offer a couple new programs. Like I said, the new space will allow for students to do more simulation in our nursing and healthcare programs. And so I think that will definitely influence our enrollment in some of those programs as well.
So being a private institution, I'm sure there's obviously always a concern about affordability for families and how do you pay for college? So how do you make sure you put those concerns at ease and really help families understand the financial commitment for to go to college, but also go to a private institution?
Yeah, so again, I think it's a practical matter. We really try to be transparent with families and their students and show them, first of all, exactly what it's going to cost, because what they see is the actual tuition and fees is not what they end up paying. 100% of our undergraduate students receive some form of financial aid. So when that financial and institutional aid is all applied, then we show them exactly what's left, first of all. So as a practical matter, we do try to educate people as to exactly what's the cost and what am I going to pay. And then the second part of your question is really about value. Why is it worth it to come to a private institution? And I will tell you that actually, in some cases, in terms of cost, it's the same or less they pay at a private institution, at least this institution, and many private institutions in Pennsylvania, as it is some of the state institutions in Pennsylvania. The amount of debt that students come out with is less in the nonprofit independent sector than it is in the state sector. So, and again, many people don't realize that. So it's about educating them. But again, the value piece is about why it's different to be at Gwynedd Mercy. What do you get? And that's that base with the mission and the core values and the outcomes that we have, both practical, again, doing well and doing good. So I, at every opportunity when I speak at an open house or an accepted students day, I illustrate all of those things best I can. Our financial aid people walk them through all of those things as well so that they're educated and they know. I will also say, again, being a Mercy institution, we put a high value on access for students and inclusivity for students. So, we historically have served those who may not have the opportunity to go to college. And so it's important for us that they have that opportunity to come here.
So how do you make sure that students persist? What pieces do you have in place to make sure that students go from freshman to sophomore year, but also persist through to graduation?
Yeah, very important to us. And because it's a mission imperative that we accepted these students, that we want them to finish and complete. So, like I said, we pay a lot of attention to what their needs are. A lot of intervention strategies. So, if a student is not coming to class more than 2 times in a row, there's a whole committee of people that sit around and talk about, okay, what do we do next? There's alerts that go off. There's, like I said, counseling. It's sometimes fairly intrusive, showing up at a student's door to say, hey, you haven't been in class for a couple times. And you know what is very interesting, Brad? I've been here 6 years. I just started my 7th year. And at every time I meet with students, I always ask them, what do you like best about Gwynedd Mercy? And I can tell you, it's very interesting. 100% of the time, the answer is the same. And that is, oh, I really like the small classes and the attention that I get from my professors because they know who I am. So students recognize that the faculty and staff do care about whether or not they're sitting in class and they're showing up to wherever it is they're supposed to be. They appreciate the outreach. So, that's, I would say, first and foremost, kind of what we do to address retention and persistence of students is making sure they understand that we care that they finish and that they get to where they need to be. And we help them every step of the way. I think we do that actually really well here.
So what's been the biggest change from being an attorney to being the present, what have you been able to carry over? What has been the biggest surprise as far as your day to day?
Yes, it's I laugh because in my 6 years here, I have completed several real estate deals, and they've been rather significant, and they've had terrific impact, for the institution. But I could have never anticipated that I would have spent that amount of time in the last several years in the middle of a pandemic doing, kind of real estate transactions. And I was not a real estate attorney, by the way, either. But it's a terrific skill set to have as a university president, because I at least understand how to read a contract, and I know what to look for. I know how to deal with the many attorneys that we have had to deal with, not just for the real estate deals, but other things that, other things that occur in the life of a university. And as also, I would say, the sort of analytical eye that I bring to really everything that I do. It's a great background to have as university president. So honestly, there's a lot of similarity, I would say, more than differences from when I practiced. And because I did a lot of litigation, and presentation, that kind of thing, that's the same too. I mean, I have to present all the time to boards and gatherings. So, I always say it's a great preparation for this kind of work.
So now you recently became the chair for the Atlantic East Conference. Is that correct?
Yes, last year. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm curious. What are your thoughts as far as all of the realignment that's going on across the country with the various conferences?
Yeah, I mean, higher education as a whole, similar to healthcare, is really undergoing a lot of transformation. It was happening prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic, I think, accelerated a lot of movement. And we've all been waiting for this demographic cliff that's supposed to occur in 25, 26. Well, I think it's already here, So again, that sort of big change in higher ed shifting is fueling, I think, also what's happening in the athletic situation. So it's not really all that different in Division III and even in the Atlantic East. Some of the conferences people are moving, jumping from one to another, and the goal is, I think, the same, especially at Division III, is what's best for the student. And that's really what I can speak to, is what's happening at Division III. We're focused on what's the best thing for our student athletes, even at the Atlantic East. We're trying to grow the conference as well. So, I think it's a time of great change, and people are trying to figure out what's the best configuration of organization that's going to serve the goals of meeting the student athletes where they are and getting them to where they need to be. So I can't really speak to Division I. That's like a whole different, can of worms, as they say.
Well, I imagine now you're probably doing a lot of fundraising.
We are in the silent phase of a campaign.
Okay. So
Yes.
what makes a successful fundraiser?
I think a successful fundraiser is somebody who's able to build relationships with people and is a good listener. Because you have to deal with a lot of different types of people who have different interests in what they want to be philanthropic about, what they care about. And really, that's been the fun of doing fundraising, is really getting to meet people from all different backgrounds. They have a different connection with the university, or maybe they have no connection with the university. And I get to tell them the story of the Sisters of Mercy, how they came here and founded the institution 75 years ago. And it's great for us to talk about our 75th anniversary, all the great things that are going on. And then they tell me what they're interested in. And so I think those are the two things is, able to build a relationship with somebody and able to listen to what the donors are interested in, because they want to leave a legacy for this institution, which is what my goal is to make sure that the legacy is secure here. And so we can be partners in that, in the fundraising effort.
So speaking of legacy, so at Gwynedd Mercy, where do you see the institution in 10 years?
So yeah, 10 years is so far into the future, but
maybe we look at 5.
yeah, 5 is more doable. But in a word, I would say thriving. We really want to be the thriving Catholic university leader in professional and healthcare education. That really is our guiding vision for what we're working on right now and what we'll be working on the next few years. So I would say 5 years from now that we're going to reach that goal. The buildings will be built and renovated. We will have celebrated our anniversary and done some more initiatives along that. And I think fully recovered from, the last several years of pandemic effect and the tail of that as well. So that's what I see in about 5 years from now.
Excellent. Well, Deanne D'Amelio from Gwynedd Mercy. Hey, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate the opportunity.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.